Quote, the findings consistently demonstrate that male victimhood beliefs are driven by perceived privilege loss rather than objective economic hardship, end quote.
We keep acting like all the emotional labor should come free with a girlfriend. No, that's over. This is exactly why so many women are opting out, because they're tired of being a mom with benefits. It is gross.
Somebody in my comments said that, oh, Odie is utilizing red pill ideology in order to get the attention of men. And I sat and I processed on that a couple of days, and I was like, is it that I'm using red pill ideology, or is it that we have become so accustomed to identifying men as absolute aggressors?
But if we're identifying the core issue and who is responsible for it, women wouldn't be anywhere around it. You cannot give these men, these master manipulators, any room to blame women, because as soon as you do, they will. As soon as you say, yeah, well, women aren't part of the problem. See, women. I'm here to tell y'all right now, men are not the victims. Men are not the victims because men victimize everybody. Like, we as a group, we victimize everybody else. And if we victimize ourselves, then we aren't the victims. If you know what I mean? Like, because we are, we are harming ourselves. So you're not like, if I'm cutting myself, I'm not a victim of being cut. I'm cutting myself, right? A victim requires somebody else doing it to me for me to be a victim. So men aren't necessarily the victims as a group, again, because all of our wounds are self-inflicted as men. Like, women don't harm men. And I'm not saying, when I say all, again, I'm talking about as a group, as a class, as a whole, as a collective, in general. In general, one-to-one, on case-by-case basis, yes, there are women who victimize men. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But as a collective, women don't victimize men, right? I will always talk about this because it has to be talked about all the time, because this is essentially what we're fighting against. But we're fighting against the fact that men are like real life trolls. Like, men are everyday DARVO, physical representations of internalized DARVO. It's just every day you just see the DARVO over and over and over and over and over again. The tactics being employed every single day. Never taking accountability, never taking responsibility for our own actions, never acknowledging the fact that, again, we victimize ourselves. We're always trying to act like it's like we make a mess, we fuck everything up, and then we go look at women and go, what? You're not gonna help me clean it up? And then the women go, okay, I'll help you start cleaning it up, which they shouldn't. They don't need to. It's not their job to, but they do. Because they're nice and they're like genuinely cool people and they want to see us be better, right? So they start helping us clean up the mess. And as soon as they start helping us clean up the mess, we stop. We stop. They're still cleaning. And then we're like, yeah, clean up that mess. It's your job to clean it up. You said you was going to help. And the women go, wait. They look around, they go, wait, why am I the only one cleaning up the mess? Why don't you, you created the mess. You're not going to help? What happened? What's going on? And then the men go, nah, actually, you caused the mess. You're responsible for the mess too. It goes both ways. There goes that DARVO. And the women are like, what did I do? And they're confused because they don't remember messing shit up. But men are just, all the men are yelling. I'm telling you did it. And they go, okay, well, I take some responsibility. See, it's your fault. It's your fault. You're to blame. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing. And then finally, women get to this breaking point where they're like, I'm done. I'm not doing it. And then women get attacked for not helping out with, like, see, y'all don't want to see y'all don't want to y'all just as bad as the men. And it's wicked. It's hard to watch, y'all. It really is.
Quote, the findings consistently demonstrate that male victimhood beliefs are driven by perceived privilege loss rather than objective economic hardship, end quote. This is a summary of a 2024 paper by Professor Joan Kim that studies what she calls male victimhood ideology, which essentially is this growing belief that men are the primary targets of gender discrimination. For example, a 2024 report finds that 60% of Gen Z men across 31 countries believe that women's equality discriminates against men. And a long-running survey of teenagers in the US finds that the percentage of American boys who agree completely that women should be paid the same for doing the same work as men fell from 72% in 2018 to 57% in 2023. And these patterns have been documented across the world, including in South Korea, where Professor Kim conducted this research, which ironically has the largest gender pay gap in the OECD. And her findings really shed light on this disconnect, as she finds that this male victimhood mentality that blames women's gains for men's perceived struggle to get ahead was actually most pronounced among men from higher socioeconomic backgrounds, concluding, quote, male victimhood discourse is embraced most by those who perceive a loss of privilege rather than by those who are marginalized. Along those lines, her research also found that men who had lower incomes, who had less education, who were unemployed, were no more likely to identify with these male victimhood beliefs than their male peers who were better off. And these patterns were absent in women, who consistently expressed lower levels of victimhood ideology relative to their male peers under similar conditions. In fact, research consistently finds that men and women alike significantly underestimate the extent of gender inequality that discriminates against women, chronically overestimating metrics like progress toward equal pay and their representation in positions of power, and chronically underestimating the extent and costs of inequities like household labor and violence against women.
Amongst other things, like how we just found out about the toothpaste being tested on men and not being tested on women, and, you know, things of that nature. You know, how women's pads, they're putting deadly chemicals in them, you know, all types of other things. Like, the patriarchy runs deep. You never see it, but that is where we are starting off. This is how we are starting off. Men perceive themselves to be victims in a system that is set up for men to succeed, and not only succeed, right, at the bare minimum, not be harmed by the system. Men have a choice in the patriarchy to not be harmed by it. We can choose to not be harmed by the patriarchy. We may not be able, we aren't all able to ascend to the highest heights of the patriarchy. We're not. The vast majority of us don't have access to that. But if men chose, like, men can choose a path where they're never abused, like outside of their home, like once they grow up, right? So out, you know, they can't control growing, you know, their childhood. Outside of their childhood, men can choose not to ever be abused. And I'm talking about, and still deal with women. We can choose not to be abused. We can escape every single abusive relationship for the vast majority of men. You're never trapped in a relationship with a woman. As soon as that woman does one thing, boom, I'm out, right? Cool. So you can avoid abuse. You don't have to worry about a woman trying to kill you. You don't have to, you can, the gender pay gap isn't real for you. You can go, you know, you go to work, you show up on time, you're going to be good. Nobody is going to fire you because you're a man. Nobody is going to replace you because you're a man. You don't have to worry about any of that, right? You could, like I already mentioned, all the products you buy, you can comfortably know all these products have been tested on men. Everything that I'm buying has been tested on men. Everyone. So I don't got to worry about no weird side effects coming out later or whatever the case may be, based on the fact that I'm a man. It may come back based on the fact that I'm a human. That's a different discussion. That's everybody being affected. But you can avoid the negative impacts of the patriarchy for the most part if you're a man. You can't if you're a woman. You just can't. And that's why this clip is so annoying. Because, again, Scott Galloway, I've talked about him many a times, and I probably will continue. Scott Galloway is so close yet so far from getting the point. But remember what I said earlier about how men fuck everything up for everybody and then expect everybody to do the labor to fix it? Scott Galloway is one of those men who, he doesn't get that. He won't accept that.
When women don't have a relationship, they pour that energy into their friends and their work. When a man doesn't have a relationship, he pours it into conspiracy theory, porn, and misogyny.
If women can be okay without relationships, so can men. Also, stop prescribing women as the cure. Men don't need girlfriends to rescue them from isolation. They need community, accountability, and friends who actually ask them how they are doing. And men can do that by being the change they want to see in the world. Women have been building support systems forever. Book clubs, group chats, therapy, wine nights. Men could do the same thing, but instead, we keep acting like all the emotional labor should come free with a girlfriend. No, that's over. This is exactly why so many women are opting out, because they're tired of being a mom with benefits. It is gross. Scott Galloway is almost there, but still missing the point. He isn't wrong that men are struggling, but he keeps naming the symptom, loneliness, without naming the cause, patriarchy. It's the same system that tells men not to cry, not to depend on anyone, and not to be vulnerable, and then acts shocked when they end up isolated. And through it all, we keep circling back to what's best for men. Apparently, once men start suffering, it's a crisis. But when women spent decades juggling childcare, careers, and the mental load, that was called a lifestyle choice. So, if we actually want healthier men and healthier relationships, stop handing women the bill for men's emotional deficits. You don't fix patriarchy by dating it.
You don't fix patriarchy. You don't fix the patriarchy by dating it. Damn, I love that line. And if you think he's lying and you think he's wrong, listen, I'll show you. He's 100% right. This is what men say. Again, this is what I'm saying, straight out of the horse's mouths.
So, for example, I was listening to a reel, and the speaker was talking about vulnerability, but the context was how it is that Brene Brown, her ideology may not fit Black women, because Brene Brown, if you don't know about Brene Brown is a fantastic TEDx speaker. She's an author. She's done amazing work, specifically in the space of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And she actually has a TED Talk that's very interesting, where she was talking about how she was studying vulnerability, things of that nature, and she went to go do a book signing. And at this book signing, a man walked up to her, and presumably a white man, and the man asked her, "Have you ever had conversations with men about vulnerability?" And she said no. And he said, "That's typical." And what he said was, he said, "Do you see those women who you're signing these books for?" She said, "Yeah." He said, "To me, emotionally, these women would rather watch me die on top of this horse than to see me get off." Right? And I've asked the question a number of times, do we genuinely want men to be emotionally intelligent, or do we want them to be emotionally convenient?
Listen, I listen. When these people be talking, I be listening very, very intently to what they're saying. So the man walks up, the woman is talking about, I'm presumably men being vulnerable and the lack thereof. He's like, yeah, men aren't vulnerable because, and the because is dun dun dun, women. Men aren't vulnerable because of women. And he points to the women and he says, these women would rather me die on this horse, which is a lie. It's a lie. The problem is the patriarchy. Like the gentleman said in the prior clip, the problem is the patriarchy. The problem isn't women. The problem is men. And even if you wanted to blame women, even if you wanted to, which you can't, but even if you wanted to, you would still have to ask the question, okay, where did women learn that from? Men. It's still going to circle back to men. Let's say all these women have internalized misogyny. Where did they learn the misogyny from? The patriarchy. Who created the patriarchy? Men. Who perpetuates it? Men. Men. Patriarchy. This shit is crazy, y'all. I'm telling you, the men, they're doing everything but taking accountability.
Because my firm belief is, and I've also argued the point, that men don't necessarily center themselves as much as they center the performances of the patriarchy. Because if men actually centered themselves, I firmly believe that the patriarchy would exist less intensely.
Okay.
The reason being is because there are a number of men who perform patriarchal things compulsively because they do not believe that outside of those compulsive performances, they will be respected, identified as men, or validated.
Give me some examples.
Validated by who? Validated by who is the question. Now listen to his example and tell me what group of women would not validate this or respect this in general.
What
So
that looks like.
It's just telling somebody like, yo, you hurt my feelings. You hurt my feelings. Not, oh, that shit pissed me off. Like, no, none of the anger like Jason Wilson was talking to, I forget what her name is.
Mel Robbins.
Mel Robbins, yes.
Yeah.
And Jason Wilson said, we use anger because anger is easy.
Mm-hmm.
We use anger because anger is acceptable. We use anger because anger is socially constructed to be the emotion that a man is supposed to wield.
Yeah.
But if a man were to step back away from that anger and look at you and say, yo, you hurt my feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and that just be it.
What group of women, ask yourself, what group of women would not respect a man who is genuinely hurt by something, not using it as a way to manipulate? You got to add those caveats because men are notoriously manipulative, right? We are notorious gaslighters, right? So let's remove all of that. Let's create a scenario in which a man is actually being harmed by a woman and he says to the woman, you hurt my feelings, simple and plain, and then articulates how and why she hurt his feelings. What percentage of women do you think would not accept that and would shame him for saying that? Like, oh, you a punk. You a like, what group of women would do that? What percentage of women do you think would do that? I think 10% of women may reject that. Fuck it, I'll go high. 20% of women. 80% of women are going to be like, I respect that. I did not mean to hurt your feelings. That was not my goal. Right? And you can have that conversation. Now ask yourself this. If you told one of your homeboys or you told a man that, what percentage of them would accept that, digest it, process it, accept it, and say back to you, I'm sorry, I did not mean to hurt your feelings? Flip it around. 20% would accept it. The rest would call you a punk. The rest would dismiss it. That's the whole point in all of this. This is not a problem that women are responsible for nor perpetuate. Period. So stop mentioning women. You're not a victim, Odie. Any other man, stop. Oh, women are not concerned about you performing for them patriarchally. They're not worried about that. That is men. That's man on man violence.
How was the response to that? What is the response to that?
You
right? Either you a bitch or, brother, I've seen this happen in real time. And it doesn't matter.
What woman gonna call their man a bitch? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying women don't. I'm just saying for that, like in that instance, that's not even safe for women to do. That's what I'm saying. It just, that's as soon as you start talking about women, I instantly shut down. I instantly know this is all a game.
Whose platform it's on. Going back to the conversation that we were having before we started recording, where somebody in my comments said that, oh, Odie is utilizing red pill ideology in order to get the attention of men. And I sat and I processed on that a couple of days, and I was like, is it that I'm using red pill ideology, or is it that we have become so accustomed to identifying men as absolute aggressors?
Aggressors,
okay. Right? It is difficult, and I've done research on this, peer review research, of course. We societally have a difficulty contextualizing men as victims unless that harm is physically apparent. And even if that harm is physically apparent, we have a difficulty contextualizing that as victimization. It is usually contextualized as the effect of being in spaces that are dangerous, but we have a very difficult time seeing men as victims, right? So when we are talking about this idea of, and once again, I said I've seen it in real time. I've seen this happen in Kier Gaines's comments. I've seen this happen in my comments. I've seen this happen in Dr. Raquel Martin's comments. I've seen it happen so many times where when we begin having this conversation for men, from men, and about men, I've seen it happen in your comments.
Of course.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
The conversation becomes about either it is a justification of the abuse, harm, and neglect that men experience because of the patriarchy. It is a minimization of the experience of the abuse, harm, and neglect because of the patriarchy. It is an invalidation of the reality because of the patriarchy. Like there was a clip that was on the...
All of these things, by the way, are being done by men. Like he just said, they're all being done by men to men. So when you say we, this is what I don't like. Again, it's a sleight of hand, but it's really important. Remember, we started off this conversation by the man who he referenced talking about women. Now, he has not negated what that man said. He's not saying like, no, that's not what women. He has yet to say that. And he is like vacillating between blaming men and women and sometimes men. You see what I'm saying? Like like now he's saying, yeah, it's by men, for men, to men, men, but he has yet to just like draw a line in the sand and say, women aren't a part of this issue. Like as a collective, there are some women that do cause harm and they do, no doubt about it. But women in general aren't a part of this issue, but men in general are a part of this issue. When men are vulnerable, other men don't allow it. They don't allow the space for men to be vulnerable. He's not like being clear and stark about that. And he's saying we a lot. Who is the we? Is the we men? No, he's saying we as a society, men and women alike. And I'm like, that's the problem that I have when we have these discussions. Again, it's not about absolution. It's not about me saying there are no women that like women are perfect. That's not it. But if we're identifying the core issue and who is responsible for it, women wouldn't be anywhere around it. So why are we mentioning them? And it's important not to do that. It's not important to like, again, like to make women feel better. It's not about them. Ignore them in this. It has nothing to do with them. It's you cannot give these men, these master manipulators, any room to blame women, because as soon as you do, they will. As soon as you say, yeah, well, women are part of the, see, women. So I don't give them any room to do that. It's not to make women out to be angels and men out to be devils. It's about actually get into the core of the problem.
The Daily Wrap-Up podcast where Jew was talking about his experiences with his mother and how it is that his mother kept him away from his father simply because she just wanted to keep him away from his father. And for like this is his experience.
I already know what the comments was like.
There we go.
Something was wrong with your father. That's the reason why she did that.
Right? When we look at it, once again, it is an extension and a consistent implementation of deficit, because all of these things are patriarchal. All of these things are internalized patriarchy, because it is the belief that if a man is present, then everything else should be fine. So
to circle all the way back, again, the reason why people are saying something was wrong with your dad is because the vast majority of the time, a mother would never do that. That's why. That's the point. That's all. Again, nobody is saying there's never been a mother that has kept their child away from the father simply because she was bitter and jealous and da-da-da-da. No doubt about it. Nobody is saying that. What we're saying is, why are you guys so quick to blame women for issues that men perpetuate 99% of the time and women perpetuate 1% of the time? That's the problem. That's that victim mentality that the woman was talking about. You're not a victim of that woman. We're not victims of women. Women are victims of us. Remember all that stuff that Odie was just saying, right? All that bullshit, all that shit that Scott Galloway be kicking. This is what it really is. Like, this is why men can't grow. It has nothing to do with women. This is why men can't grow. This is the truth.
If you're emotionally intelligent, men, I'm meaning an orange, men are so hard to be friends with. I can't tell you the amount of male friendships I've had end when I had to like discuss one uncomfortable thing with them that involved like tapping into their emotions. And something that I've noticed with men is they will only begin to get emotionally tapped in if they're inebriated in some way. So whether this is drugs or with alcohol, I can't tell you, and I'm queer, I can't tell you the amount of heterosexual male friendships I've had where I only could really begin to understand the person when they were inebriated. And there was a person who I became like really cool with off Bumble BFF. We were both Virgos, so immediately just kind of like locked in. He was adventurous like I am. We were into like a lot of the same activities, and we were just kind of like boys from like day one. And I only knew him for like 9 months, but over the course of the 9 months, like he would tell me the most, I don't want to say like bone chilling, he would tell me like the most like shocking things at what I would consider like inappropriate times in terms of like not like, the timing was just really like strange. Like it would be like we were out like the middle of the night, or it would just be like at the strangest times. Like I really can't describe it like better than that. And like a couple months ago, and he was always like interacting with my stories, like typical friendship, right? Like liking stories and stuff like that. We were really like dialed in. And one day I was just like, I don't know anything about you, you know? And he was like, oh, what are you talking about? And that was just a very interesting conversation, because after I mentioned that to him, like for some reason when we were talking about that, he was interpreting me by saying like, I don't like know you. I've never met your dogs. I've never been in your house. I don't know what your childhood was like stuff that you would start to learn, I would think, about somebody like after a year. And for some reason, he interpreted that to mean like, oh, you're a bad friend. Let me stop holding this orange. And the reason I brought this up is because of the stuff like he would bring up, he would never dive into further detail after he brought him up at the super strange time. Anyway, after I not confronted, that's not the right word. After I had that conversation with him the following day, I was like, hey, like, are we good? What's up? He's like, yeah, we're good. Have never talked since. And we were hanging out like every week for like 9 months. Never talked since.
That is what it's like being in male relationships, like friends with men. You can't be like, men refuse to be vulnerable, right? And the reason why, and it's been touched on many times in this video already, the reason why is because men are conditioned to believe vulnerability is a weakness. So men don't allow other men to be vulnerable. Men don't allow little boys to be vulnerable, right? Get up off the ground. You scrape your knee, don't cry. Why wouldn't you cry if you scraped your knee? It hurts. Right? That person hurt your feelings. Oh my God, why are you crying? Put your big boy britches on. Whatever the case may be. We learn that from an early age. We learn to suppress it. We learn stoicism and all that bullshit, masking, essentially. And then we become shells of human beings. We look like human beings, but then we don't function like human beings. And men judge other men for being human. When you try to be a human, or you are a human, men will judge you. You will be judged. And you make other men uncomfortable and you chase them away. It's not women. He said men specifically, and I agree. And he's queer and I'm heterosexual. And all my relationships, all my best relationships, there are women that know more about me, that we only been friends for like a year or two, than male friends that I've had my whole life. You see what I'm saying? There are women who know more about me, and we've only been friends for 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, than men who I've been friends with for 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, 30 years. The problem is men. The problem is our ideology. The problem is our approach. We are not victims of women. We are not. We can be sensitive with, we can talk to women. We can't talk to men. Let's focus on that. Let's address that.